God's Black.Church. Healings and blessings from the suppressed. 30 minutes of peace from every people who refuse to disappear. Before we begin, close your eyes if you are able. Take a breath. A real one. The kind you forget to take when the world is loud. What you are about to receive is not history class. It is not a lecture. It is not another reason to be angry. You will have plenty of space for all of that. This is something different. This is 30 minutes of peace, of blessing, of healing wisdom that survived everything that was done to destroy it. From every corner of the earth where a people was told their traditions were worthless, their healers were criminals, their languages were dangerous, their ceremonies were illegal. These people did not bow down. They did not disappear. They kept the knowledge alive in secret, in silence, in the deep places where colonial governments could not reach. And now we honor them. We speak their names. We receive what they preserved. Every tradition honored here belongs to living communities, living people. We do not perform their ceremonies. We honor what they survived to keep. And we receive the spirit of their endurance as medicine for our own. Breathe in. You are safe here. Let us begin. The Lakota, Great Plains, North America. Who they were. The Lakota, one of the peoples of the Great Sioux Nation, were the masters of the Great Plains. Warriors. Hunters. Spiritual people who understood the interconnectedness of all living things centuries before modern science gave it a name. They called the Great Spirit Wakantanka, the Great Mystery. They believed every living thing was related. The buffalo, the eagle, the grass, the wind, the human being, all one family. What was done to them? The Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868, signed by the United States government, guaranteed the Black Hills to the Lakota as their sacred land forever. Then gold was discovered. The United States violated its own treaty. Soldiers came. The land was taken. In 1890, the U.S. Army massacred over 250 Lakota men, women, and children at Wounded Knee Creek in South Dakota. The Sun Dance, their most sacred ceremony, was banned by the United States government. Children were taken to boarding schools where they were forbidden to speak their language. The Lakota language, the Lakota name, the Lakota ceremony, all criminalized. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act was not passed until 1978. The Lakota were not legally allowed to practice their own religion in their own land until 1978. What they kept? They kept Wakantanka. They kept the sacred hoop, the circle of life that cannot be broken by any government or any army. They kept the understanding that healing comes from connection to the earth, to the community, to the spirit. Their healing tradition says, you cannot heal the body without healing the spirit. You cannot heal the individual without healing the community. Everything is connected. Everything matters. The Lakota teaching for the person who is wounded is this. You are part of the circle. The circle is not broken because you are hurting. The circle holds you. Rise when you are ready. We will wait. To the Lakota people, past and present. This house honors your endurance. Midiku Yoyasin. All are related. The Yoruba, West Africa. Who they were. The Yoruba people of what is now southwestern Nigeria built one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the ancient world. Their city of Ile-Ife, the city they consider the origin of all human life, was a center of art, governance, and spiritual knowledge from at least the 11th century. Their bronze and terracotta sculptures are considered among the greatest artworks in human history. They governed themselves through structured kingdoms with complex legal systems, diplomatic traditions, and moral codes, centuries before European colonizers arrived claiming to bring civilization. What was done to them? The British colonial administration arrived in the 19th century. They disrupted Yoruba governance, imposed their own political and economic systems, and used Christian missionary schools to pull people away from traditional belief. The Ifa divination system, a vast oral corpus of 256 volumes of sacred wisdom covering medicine, philosophy, ethics, history, and spiritual guidance, was dismissed as superstition. Shrines were desecrated. Traditional practices were prohibited in mission-controlled areas. When the transatlantic slave trade came, countless Yoruba were taken across the ocean, and they carried Ifa with them, hidden in memory, preserved in the rhythms of drums, kept alive in the communities of Cuba, Brazil, and Trinidad, where it survives today as Santeria, Candomblé, and Orisha traditions. What they kept? They kept Ifa. In 2008, UNESCO recognized the Ifa divination system as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The knowledge that colonial powers called superstition is now recognized as one of humanity's greatest intellectual traditions. The Yoruba healing tradition holds that every person has an ori, a personal spiritual intuition and destiny. When the ori is aligned, when you are living in harmony with your purpose, health follows. When it is disrupted by trauma, by injustice, by disconnection from who you are, healing means returning to alignment. Returning to yourself. The Yoruba blessing for the person who has lost their way: may your ori lead you home. May the ancestors who went before you clear the path. May what was taken from you be returned double. To the Yoruba people, in Nigeria, in Brazil, in Cuba, in every diaspora community where the drum still beats, this house honors what you carried across the water. ASE. It is so. So let it be. The people of Kemet, ancient Egypt, Northeast Africa. Who they were. Before it was called Egypt, before the Greeks renamed it, before the Romans occupied it, before Hollywood cast pale actresses as its queens, it was called Kemet. The Black Land. Named for the rich dark soil of the Nile that fed one of the greatest civilizations in human history. The people of Kemet were African people. Melanated people. They built the pyramids, still standing after 4,500 years, still not fully understood by modern engineering. They developed the first known surgical instruments. They mapped the stars with such precision that their calendar was more accurate than the Julian calendar used in Europe 1,000 years later. They wrote. They created legal systems. They built universities. All while much of the rest of the world was still developing basic agriculture. What was done to them? In the 19th and 20th centuries, European colonial powers excavated, removed, and distributed the artifacts of Kemet to museums across Europe. The Rosetta Stone, taken to the British Museum in London. The Nefertiti bust, taken to Berlin. Obelisks, standing in Paris, London, New York. Mummies unwrapped at Victorian dinner parties for entertainment. The graves of African ancestors treated as attractions. Egypt has formally requested the return of these items for decades. Most remain in Europe. And Hollywood replaced the brown-skinned queens of Kemet with pale actresses and called it history. What they kept? They kept the knowledge in stone. In hieroglyphs that could not be erased. In monuments that could not be moved. The healing tradition of Kemet understood that the body, the mind, and the spirit are one. That illness is disharmony. That healing requires addressing the cause, not just the symptom. The goddess Isis, healer, mother, restorer, represented the principle that what is broken can be made whole. What is lost can be found. What is scattered can be gathered. Her symbol is the throne, the foundation of all things, the thing that holds everything else up. The blessing from Kemet: may Isis spread her wings over you. May what was scattered in you be gathered. May the throne beneath you hold firm. To the people of Kemet, whose graves were robbed but whose knowledge was carved in stone, this house honors your permanence. You built what time could not destroy. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, Australia. Who they were. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of Australia are the oldest continuous civilization on Earth. 60,000 years of unbroken culture. 60,000 years of knowledge passed from generation to generation, knowledge of the land, the stars, the seasons, the plants, the animals, the human spirit. Their Dreamtime traditions, the stories of creation and connection that hold their entire understanding of the world, are not mythology. They are a comprehensive knowledge system, a science of relationship, an understanding of how everything on Earth is connected and how human beings are responsible for maintaining that connection. What was done to them? British colonization arrived in 1788. What followed was one of the most sustained campaigns of cultural destruction in human history. Massacres, displacement from ancestral lands, the outlawing of traditional ceremonies and languages, and then the stolen generations. From approximately 1910 to the 1970s, the Australian government forcibly removed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families. Between 1 in 10 and 1 in 3 children were taken, stripped of their names, forbidden to speak their languages, punished for practicing their culture. The stated goal of the government was to breed out Aboriginal identity within 3 generations. The Australian government did not formally apologize until 2008. What they kept? They kept country, the deep spiritual connection to land that no government document could sever. Aboriginal healing wisdom understands that physical, mental, and spiritual health are inseparable from connection to country, to land, to community, to ancestors. When a person is disconnected from country, through displacement, through trauma, through the forced removal of children, the healing path is reconnection. Return to land. Return to story. Return to community. Return to self. The elders say, the land remembers you even when you have forgotten it. Go back. It is waiting. The blessing from the oldest continuous culture on earth. May you find your way back to country. May the ancestors who walked this land before you light the path. May the story that carries your name be told again. To the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, 60,000 years of wisdom that no government could extinguish. This house honors your endurance. The land remembers. The Maori, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Who they were. The Maori, the indigenous Polynesian people of Aotearoa, what is now called New Zealand, were master navigators, warriors, carvers, and healers. They sailed across the Pacific Ocean using only the stars, the currents, and the winds, navigating thousands of miles of open ocean to find and settle new islands. Their tohunga, sacred healers and knowledge keepers, carried the complete medical, spiritual, and cultural knowledge of the community. Their healing practice called rongoa combined herbal medicine, physical therapy, spiritual ceremony, and deep knowledge of the human body and the natural world. They understood that the person and the environment are one, that you cannot heal a sick person without addressing the sick relationship between that person and the world around them. What was done to them? In 1840, the British Crown signed the Treaty of Waitangi with Maori chiefs, promising to protect Maori land, culture, and sovereignty. The treaty was systematically violated. Maori land was taken. Maori governance was dismantled. And in 1907, the New Zealand government passed the Tohunga Suppression Act, a law specifically targeting Maori healers and making their traditional healing practices illegal. The knowledge holders were criminalized. The healing traditions were forced underground. The law remained in effect for decades, cutting an entire people off from their own medical and spiritual tradition. What they kept? They kept the haka. They kept the wakapapa, the genealogy that connects every living person to every ancestor and to the land itself. They kept the understanding that your identity is not just personal, it is relational. Who you are is inseparable from who came before you, who stands beside you, and what land you stand on. The Maori healing blessing is, Kia kaha, kia maya, kia manawanui. Be strong, be brave, be steadfast. Your ancestors are behind you. You do not stand alone. To the Maori people, whose healers were criminalized but whose knowledge survived, this house honors your strength. Kia kaha. Be strong. The Cherokee, Southeastern North America. Who they were. The Cherokee Nation was one of the most sophisticated and organized indigenous nations in North America. They developed their own written alphabet, created by Sequoyah in 1821, making them one of the few peoples in history to go from no written language to widespread literacy within a generation. They had their own newspapers, their own government, their own courts, their own constitution modeled in some ways on the United States Constitution. They were farmers, traders, diplomats, and scholars. And they had a deep healing tradition rooted in the understanding that humans, plants, animals, and the spirit world are in constant relationship. What was done to them? In 1838, the United States government forced the removal of the Cherokee Nation from their ancestral homelands in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Alabama. Soldiers rounded up Cherokee men, women, and children at gunpoint. They were held in stockades, in conditions that killed hundreds before the march even began. Then they were forced to walk over 1,000 miles to what is now Oklahoma. In winter, without adequate food, clothing, or shelter. Approximately 4,000 Cherokee people died on that march. They called it Nunadaltsuni, the trail where they cried. History calls it the Trail of Tears. What they kept? They kept their language. They kept their medicine. The Cherokee healing tradition understands that every plant was put on earth with a purpose, that for every disease, a cure exists in nature if you know how to find it. Their medicine people, the Didandwischi, were trained in the knowledge of plants, of ceremony, of the relationship between the physical and the spiritual. The Cherokee teaching for the person in pain, the medicine is near. You are not alone in this forest. Everything around you is reaching toward you. Let it. To the Cherokee Nation, who walked a trail of tears and still arrived. This house honors your survival. Watto. Thank you. We are grateful. The Zulu, Southern Africa. Who they were. The Zulu kingdom, built by King Shaka Zulu in the early 19th century, was one of the most powerful military and political forces in sub-Saharan Africa. At its height, the Zulu kingdom controlled a vast territory in what is now KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Shaka transformed a small clan into a nation through military innovation, political organization, and cultural unity. The Zulu were not only warriors, they were farmers, healers, craftspeople, and spiritual practitioners with a deep tradition of ancestral connection. Their healers, the Sangoma and the Inyanga, carried the knowledge of plants, ceremony, and the relationship between the living and the ancestors. What was done to them? The British Empire engaged the Zulu kingdom in a series of wars in the late 19th century, most famously the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. Despite defeating the British at the Battle of Isandlwana, one of the worst defeats ever suffered by the British Army, the Zulu kingdom was eventually broken by superior firepower and divided by colonial politics. Under apartheid in South Africa, which lasted officially until 1994, Zulu people and all Black South Africans were subjected to systematic racial oppression. Passed laws, forced removals, banned gatherings. The suppression of traditional healing and ceremony was part of the broader campaign to destroy Black identity and culture. What they kept? They kept Ubuntu, the Nguni Bantu philosophy that says a person is a person through other persons. I am because we are. Not the Western concept of the isolated individual fighting alone for survival, but the understanding that human beings are defined by their relationships, that your humanity is expressed through your connection to others. That healing is a communal act. The Zulu blessing for the person who is struggling, Sababona. I see you. Not just as a body in front of me. I see your spirit. I see your ancestors behind you. I see your potential ahead of you. You are seen. To the Zulu nation, whose warriors stood and whose healers endured. This house honors your vision. Sababona. I see you. The Hawaiian people, Pacific Islands. Who they were. The native Hawaiian people, the Kanaka Maoli, built a sophisticated civilization across the Hawaiian archipelago in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Master navigators, farmers, fishermen, and healers. Their healing tradition, called Laolapo, used hundreds of native plants for medicine, combined with prayer, ceremony, and the restoration of harmony between the person and the natural world. They understood that physical illness often has spiritual roots. That healing requires addressing the whole person, their relationships, their spirit, their connection to land and ocean and sky. What was done to them? In 1893, a group of American businessmen, backed by U.S. Marines, illegally overthrew Queen Liliuokalani, the last sovereign monarch of Hawaii. The United States government later formally apologized for this in 1993, exactly 100 years after the overthrow. The Hawaiian language was banned in schools from 1896 to 1978, 82 years. The traditional healing practices were suppressed. The native population estimated at around 300,000. Before European contact was devastated by introduced diseases. By 1900, fewer than 40,000 native Hawaiians remained. What they kept? They kept aloha. Not the commercial greeting on every tourist souvenir, the real meaning. Aloha is a complete philosophy of life. Alo means presence, being in the moment. Ha means breath, the divine breath of life. Aloha means to be present with the divine breath in all things. To meet every person and every moment with the awareness that the divine is breathing through everything. The Hawaiian blessing for healing, I ola mau. May you live on. May the breath continue in you. May the ocean carry what you cannot carry alone. To the Kanaka Maoli, whose kingdom was stolen but whose spirit was not. This house honors your grace. Aloha. The divine breath lives in you. The Mexica, Mesoamerica. Who they were. The Mexica, known to history as the Aztecs, built Tenochtitlan on an island in the middle of a lake where Mexico City stands today. At its peak in the early 16th century, Tenochtitlan had a population of over 200,000 people, larger than any city in Europe at the time. They built aqueducts, causeways, floating gardens called chinampas, botanical gardens, zoos, schools, and a complex calendar system more accurate than the one used in Europe. Their healing tradition combined extensive knowledge of medicinal plants. They cataloged hundreds of species with spiritual understanding and sophisticated medical practice. What was done to them? In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived with approximately 500 Spanish soldiers. Through a combination of military force, strategic alliances with rival nations, and most devastatingly, the introduction of smallpox to a population with no immunity, the Spanish destroyed the Mexica Empire within 2 years. Tenochtitlan was razed. The temples were torn down. The codices, the books that contained Mexica history, astronomy, medicine, and knowledge, were burned by Spanish priests who called them the work of the devil. Bishop Diego de Landa burned thousands of Maya manuscripts in a single day in 1562. Centuries of accumulated knowledge gone in hours. What they kept? They kept the knowledge in the plants themselves. The plants that their healers cataloged and used are still growing. Many of the medicines that modern pharmacology has developed from Central American plants trace directly back to Mexica and Maya traditional knowledge. The healing tradition survived in the hands of curanderos, traditional healers who maintained the knowledge through centuries of colonization, often at personal risk. The Mexica teaching, the earth holds the medicine. When everything else was taken, the books, the temples, the cities, the earth kept the cure. To the people of Mesoamerica, whose books were burned but whose knowledge lived in the roots. This house honors your resilience. The earth kept what they tried to burn. The Tibetan people, High Asia. Who they were. The Tibetan people developed one of the most sophisticated healing traditions in the history of humanity. Tibetan medicine, Soa Rigpa, has been practiced for over 2,500 years. It integrates knowledge of the body, the mind, and the spirit into a comprehensive system that recognizes 5 elements, 3 humors, and the profound connection between mental states and physical health. Tibetan monasteries were universities, centers of medicine, philosophy, astronomy, and art that preserved and advanced human knowledge for centuries. What was done to them? In 1950, China invaded Tibet. The Dalai Lama, the spiritual and political leader of the Tibetan people, was forced into exile in 1959. He has lived in exile in India ever since. During the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s, the Chinese government destroyed over 6,000 Tibetan monasteries. Ancient texts, medical knowledge, sacred art, and cultural heritage accumulated over centuries destroyed. Tibetan language and culture were suppressed. The traditional healing knowledge was threatened with extinction. What they kept? They kept compassion. The Tibetan understanding of healing begins with compassion for yourself and for all living beings. The recognition that suffering is universal and that the response to suffering is not to harden, not to close, not to protect yourself from feeling, but to open. To allow the pain to move through you without destroying you. The Tibetan blessing, may all beings be free from suffering. May all beings find peace. Including you. Including me. Including the people who caused the suffering. To the Tibetan people, whose monasteries were destroyed, but whose compassion was not. This house honors your peace. May all beings be free from suffering. The blessing that holds all of them together. You have just received something from 10 peoples who refused to disappear. The Lakota who held the sacred circle when governments tried to break it. The Yoruba who carried Ifa across the ocean in their memory. The people of Kemet who built in stone what no one could erase. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples whose culture survived 60,000 years and still stands. The Maori whose healers were criminalized but whose knowledge lived. The Cherokee who walked 1,000 miles in winter and still arrived. The Zulu who said Sababona, I see you, when the world refused to look. The Kanaka Maoli whose kingdom was overthrown but whose aloha was not. The Mexica whose books were burned but whose medicine lived in the roots of the earth. The Tibetan people whose monasteries were destroyed but whose compassion was not. Every single one of these peoples faced the same playbook. The same colonial forces. The same erasure of language, of healers, of ceremony, of identity. The same attempt to replace a living culture with a version that served someone else's power. And every single one of them kept something. They kept the most important thing. The thing that could not be stored in a building that could be burned, or a book that could be confiscated, or a land that could be stolen. They kept the wisdom. In the body. In the memory. In the community. In the hands of the healers who continued to practice in secret at personal risk so that the knowledge would survive for you. For you. Reading this right now. Receiving this right now. You are the reason they held on. So receive what they preserved. The Lakota teach you, everything is connected. You are not alone in this. The circle holds you. The Yoruba teach you, return to alignment. Return to yourself. May what was taken be returned double. Kemet teaches you, what is broken can be made whole. The throne beneath you holds firm. The Aboriginal elders teach you, the land remembers you. Go back. It is waiting. The Maori teach you, kia kaha. Be strong. Your ancestors are behind you. The Cherokee teach you, the medicine is near. Everything around you is reaching toward you. The Zulu teach you, sababona. You are seen. Your spirit is seen. Your ancestors are seen. The Kanaka Maoli teach you, aloha. The divine breath lives in you. Let the ocean carry what you cannot. The Mexica teach you, the earth kept what they tried to burn. The cure is still here. The Tibetan people teach you, may all beings be free from suffering. Including you. You are the descendant of people who refuse to disappear. That is not small. That is the most powerful inheritance on earth. Midikyu Yoyasin. ASE. Kia kaha. Sabobona. Aloha. Wado. May all beings be free from suffering. Rest now. You have been seen. You have been healed.